Well, hello, good evening. You are live on Sports Today. This is 8 p.m. and of course it's time for Euro 2020 chatter. Hours away from that game between France and Germany. Of course, we're all talking about that game. Such a hype game, isn't it? Because of so many issues on both sides of the camp. Before that, of course, you'll get to see Cristiano Ronaldo fans will get to see Portugal in action. But right now, we're going to focus a little on the France-Germany rivalry and the France-Germany tension. There are tensions in both camps. There's been some build-up between Olivier Giroud and Kylian Mbappe for France, and then of course Joachim Low is under increasing pressure, and he will have to be held accountable by the time the Euro is over. Remember the World Cup campaign, of course, France, the reigning world champions. We'll talk about certain issues. We'll talk about certain issues. I have with me two guests tonight. It's going to be an exciting, spiced up debate because one of those gentlemen is a France loyalist, while the other, a former professional footballer, is more of a German fan. He's more of that. He's got that German charisma. And there you go. With Chirag Paul is a former professional footballer joining us on Sports Today for the first time, and the ever enigmatic and energetic Chinmoy Roy, a familiar face by now with Sports Today. But Chinmoy, I'll start with you. I'll start with you to sort of lay down tonight's debate. You look at two teams, France and Germany. You look at the tradition of success. You look at how competent these teams have been. France more flamboyant. The German style has been far more accurate. Ball possession. Over the last few years, they'd be disappointed. Embarrassing World Cup campaign 3 years ago. France complete opposite, but tension in both camps. You look at what's developing between Olivier Giroud and Kylian Mbappe. Of course, Loris has played it down. Didier Deschamps has tried to play it down. But no matter how much you play it down, that tension is pretty palpable. But why is Olivier Giroud so angry? And is there merit in his anger? What is going on in the French camp, Chinmay?
See, Rajashri, at the outset, I must say that once too many stars gathers at one place, right? It can be either way, right? For example, in other sports, we have seen also if the limelight is shifting to one place, some other stars feels the ego is hurting them. So
Mm,
it is one way, and the other way, like what I was seen in Barcelona, Messi, Neymar, Suarez, they all gel together. So it's perspective in
mm,
case of Kylian Mbappe and Giroud. Now, Giroud said that they won 3-0. He got 2 goals. He said that I was not getting the balls from Mbappe. And Mbappe said that what's the point in going to the press and saying all these things? He could have come to me in the dressing room and spoken all this. And
mm,
Mbappe's explanation was great. He said that when I play, I think that 365 times I should get the ball. I don't get it. So there is no frustration. There shouldn't be any frustration. You don't get it. Now, see, having said that, I must say here, France is a great team. You can't ignore that. Okay, maybe one point here and there, Giroud has said like that, but look at the team and their performance in the last
mm,
4 years. So consistent, right? There's, I'd say, galaxy of stars starting from
mm,
you just name it, Rafael Varane, N'Golo Kante. Then in up front, Karim Benzema has made a comeback. Otto Griezmann, right? Giroud himself is there. So it's something. Kylian Mbappe, I just forgot the name, the star of the stars. So they should be firing on all cylinders. Okay, no matter one chink here, like what Giroud and he has ignited, I think it will all die down. Think
mm.
one more point. Didier Deschamps is trying to play in a different format. But for me, a good team will adapt to any sort of situation. So I would suggest that maybe something is brewing in the camp, French camp. Once the ball starts rolling, everything will be settled.
No, but just to play the devil's advocate here, Chirag, there is no questioning France's talent. There is no questioning their depth. There is no questioning their success. Of course, the world champions, they won against Croatia. There was a pretty emphatic win in that final. But look at it this way. This friction between Giroud and Mbappe has now boiled over. It is looking ugly at the outset. Mbappe threatening to host his own press conference. Loris has had to go and say something. Didier Deschamps is having to say some things. It's like, is it that typical battle of ego between an attacker and a midfielder? Is it because, and or on the other hand, is it because too much star power in a camp can suddenly distract you from the job? If France win tonight, all well and good, but if they don't, how is the public going to look at this simmering tension? Also, Chirag, before you take that, Karim Benzema is back. So is it for sure that Giroud is going to start despite what he did against Bulgaria, or do you see Karim Benzema in the starting lineup there?
If you look through history, especially when there's a big tournament that's come up, and
Mm,
the big teams that are actually panning out, and they've got the stars who are ready, and they've had good seasons on the back of a good season, usually you'll have a sort of mixture of egos within the starting lineup itself. Now, for the first point, and to mention your last point here, I don't think Giroud will be on the starting pitch for too many of the games. So in that sense, when it comes to tactics, or if there's any egos, it's mainly something that can be dealt with in the dressing room. Also, I do feel in terms of Deschamps as a coach and a former player himself, and he's been part of big dressing rooms. Let's not forget, he's been part of the French squad for a long time, both on and off the pitch. I think he'll be able to manage it in that way, and this is just something in terms of egos clashing in the beginning. Let's not forget, during the season there was this whole Real Madrid when Benzema was playing with Vinicius Junior, I believe it was, where the ball was not being passed around. There were things which were caught off camera. Um, at the end of the day, football is a sport where millions of people watch it, albeit it might not be on the field right at this point, even though we are having fans back right now. I think when the whistle is blown, all of that's just going to go out of the door, and then it's really based on tactics, how
mm,
people have been playing, how they see the game panning out, and the opposition they're playing. Um,
mm,
you know, at heart, if we were to look into the French squad, it's quite a young squad, and very experienced at the same time. From the back line all the way to the front. If we had to look at a predictive sort of lineup in terms of what they did in the previous friendly games, and they were trying to obviously play as many players in the friendly games coming up to this first game. I think they're going to line up in a very strategic manner against Germany. I think the tactics are very clear in terms of how they're going to play football. I think Germany is also quite clear in that sense. They've got a balance of youth and experience. Hence, they've called back two of their most experienced players over the last decade or so. It's a big call for them to get them back into the squad. But I do think we'll see a lot of them. I think Germany needed that experience. And this is a big game. I think it's a bigger game for Germany than it is for France, because
mm.
France will have the option to try and win it back through the group stages. I think for Germany, it's a must-win game. It's a
Mhm.
game that will set their tournament and how they play looking forward as well. Also, we've got to keep in mind the World Cup's the next year, so it's a big thing. A lot of people are going to be playing for their spots for the World Cup as well next year. So, ego or not, I think people will balance out when the whistle blows, and they'll go about it. For me, it's always been about a team sport. It's less about the ego. It's about making sure that we're getting the result out at the end of the day. And I think somehow or the other, this does not help the French squad leading up to the game, which is why, in terms of nerves, I think the German squad will be a little bit more up for it.
Okay. Before I take that to Chinmoy, you mentioned Joachim Low has called back on two of his stars after the World Cup. Is it going to be like swallowing a bitter pill of pride for Low to get these two gentlemen on the park, Thomas Muller and Mats Hummels, Chirag, given the way these two were treated, and also Joachim Low has been under severe criticism himself. His 15-year-old reign as German coach is coming to an end after the
Mhm.
Euro. He'll be left. He'll be looking for some answers as well. So how does that play out? Because you have Didier Deschamps trying to calm things down in the French camp, and here the German coach is trying to sort of in a way save his own legacy before he hands over the reins.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Look, at the end of the day, what Joachim Lau has been able to do with that squad over the years is phenomenal. And yes, he's in a bit of a tight position. 2018 was not great. But when you look back at his reign, he's achieved a lot for that squad. He's achieved a lot for the country. So he will be missed. And if you balance that with Deschamps and where they're headed, they've had a very, very different World Cup in 2018, leading into this tournament. So they'll be looking at this from a perspective where, how do I leave an impact in not only the country which is being represented, but the players and the best form that I can get out of them. I think a lot of this in this particular game is going to be based on tactics. I think bringing back these two guys was fundamental in the core of the squad. Yes, the same way we're talking about egos, I think when Hummels and Muller get back onto the pitch wearing the jerseys of their countries, all of that's going to be forgotten. All of that's going to be forgotten, and they're just going to be focused on the game to ensure that they're beating the world champions. Because at the end of the day, they're playing the world champions, right? So I think whatever we discuss and we talk about off the pitch is very relevant in terms of the persona of the minds of the players. But I think the experience that is brought in by these two players specifically, also they've got youth on their side. If you look at their bench, in Germany or France, both of them have equally strong benches. So I wouldn't be surprised if they push in a bit of youth towards the end of the games. And honestly, I'm actually looking forward to seeing Hummels and Muller play and how they would line up against the French guys. They're a bit older than most of them, but they've got that experience hat on. So I think it'll be an interesting watch.
Chinmay, again, like Chirag mentioned, different scenarios for both Germany and France, despite their layers of problems. But are you on board with Chirag on that? For the Germans to bring back Müller and Hummels, is that a statement? For Lowe to bring those two players back and for him to put them on the pitch. Is it a reflection of the fact that he's not quite done what he should have done over the last 3 years? And he promised, by the way, he promised the world to German fans after that embarrassment in 2018. He's not been able to live through that, has he?
See, the fact that every coach, every team has its time. Okay, you can't be dominating the world football for an extended period of time. For example, I just get back 2008, this Spain team. It's a golden era. From 2008, their ball started rolling. Euro they won, and they extended in 2010, won the World Cup. 2012, again Spain won the Euro. So the span between this, you can see the kind of players they had. You start from Iniesta, you start from Xavi Alonso, Xavi Hernandez, then in the back, Gerard Piqué, up front, David Villa. Okay, you can name it. Iker Casillas in the goal. So that 4-5 era, they dominated the world. Now coming to Germany, 2014, a super team. You have Schweinsteiger, you have got Thomas Muller, you name it, Hummels, everywhere. Okay, so the fact is, every team has its time. Now, 2018, it disintegrated. So, Joachim Low, as Chirag says quite correctly, he's a long reign. So, he had his good time. You can't ignore the kind of successes he has achieved so far. But as is for example, Spain, even their golden era has passed, right? So, they're again rebuilding. So, Germany again is rebuilding. So, one has to accept that it can't go on. The juggernaut can't carry on. There comes a time now why he has to bring back Hummels and Thomas Muller. They got a 6-0 drubbing. You understand, 6-0 drubbing in the World Cup qualifier. Okay, against Spain. Okay, we all know. Was it against Spain? Yeah, against Spain, 6-0. And they lost to Northern Macedonia, 2-1. It was absolutely the most upsetting result. So having got these two absolute disastrous results, the coach doesn't have anything to fall back rather than bring these two guys who are a little bit aggrieved because Thomas Muller and Matt Hummels, they are quite consistent. I just get you through the Bundesliga. In the Bundesliga, Robert Lewandowski has got a staggering 41 goals, eclipsing Gerd Muller. And of that, 18 of the assists come from Thomas Muller. 18 assists, and he himself got 11 goals. So it's not that Muller is out of form, nor is Hummels. It was something that Lowe thought that I'll go for the next generation, as it happens to the many coaches. For example, Luis Enrique, he has dropped out. This guy called the stopper back, right? Ramos, Sergio Ramos. So it works now under fire. He has brought them back. I think, as Chirag rightly says, the experience matters a lot. So these two guys hopefully will bring in. But for me, really, the France team is too good. France team is too good, and Germany doesn't have much of confidence behind them. Kind of drubbing. They have got every international team. I know that they might turn it back, but there is a thing called confidence. That I think will be one more thing I wanted to point out in the German team. They have got 5, 6 players who have just finished in the European Championship finals, right? With Chelsea, the 3 of the guys, they have been, this guy's Havertz, then Warner, then Rudiger. Okay, Gundogan is a tremendous player with Man City. So they are having some of the very good, strong players from the club. But then if you compare it with the French team, they are nowhere.
No, in a sense, also though Chirag, yes, the Germans. I see a wide grin on Chirag's face. I don't know if he wants to take on Chinmoy before I fire in my next question. You wanted to make a point, Chirag.
No, he's right on a lot of fronts, but I don't think the Germans are nowhere. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, as much as I respect France and how they play football, they play beautiful football. I'm actually quite excited to see Germany play more than anything else. They have a very clear strategy, in my opinion. I think they'll probably start off 3-4-3 today. They might play with 3 centre backs, which means that they're giving their wing backs more options to play up front and bomb down the line. Which I think, honestly, the best player on the pitch at this point of time in terms of form is Kante. And there's no way of looking at that. And it would be how they can deal with Kante and how they can play around him that would really win the match for either side. So no, I think the French side on paper, with experience and form, are probably ahead, slightly ahead. But I'm quite keen to see how the Germans play. They've got experience. They're probably going to line 3 at the back, which means they're going to give some space to the guys in the middle to play up and down. They've got 3 very good guys up front that can interchange between positions. Havertz has obviously scored the goal in the Champions League final, so he would be full of confidence. There's a lot of these things coming in. Also, this whole backlash about the Champions League and playing in Europe and coming into the Euros. When you represent your country, regardless of which team you play for, it's a different badge. And it does not matter if you've played 30 games, 35 games, 40 games, 20 games, injured half the season. It does not matter. You will play your best when it comes to your country. It's always going to be there, especially with these guys.
Some would ask
lot
you.
of them are.
Some would ask you, Chirag, if that holds true for English football players as well, because there's
Well,
been
I
a lot
hope
of
so.
debate. there'll be a lot of aggrieved hearts from England and their football fans when you mentioned that, because there's been such a debate
Yeah,
raging in England football over the years.
yeah,
But
yeah. I
you
mean, that
mentioned
was.
Germany's style, Chirag.
Mhm.
On the contrary, does it sometimes look a little confusing now? Because he tried to move away from Joachim Low tried to move away from that style of ball possession. Now he wants to return to that, return to his old tactics. Something that he's again gone back to Mueller and Hummels. Also, the fact that, remember, Germany are out of, as of now, they're not in a
Mhm.
safe passageway for the Qatar World Cup also. So, and that is following the 2018 humiliation. So,
Mhm.
combining that, and I just want to drive home the point, since you've spoken highly of Germany, and you took offense to what Chirag said when he said that Germany are nowhere. Does all of that pile up? Does all that pile up to pressure in football?
Of
Because
course.
you've seen that dressing room from the inside. You've seen dressing rooms from the inside.
Of course, it piles up. It piles up a lot. If this was honestly, if this was a different squad at any other point of time or a different country, I would have probably responded in a different way. But we've seen the Germans react under pressure before as well, and they have done well. and not just as a footballing team, but even as a country. So if you look specifically as a footballing team, they are under pressure. They've probably been this is the most pressure the Germans would have been in a long time. Hence why that level of experience is important. Hence why being able to give people a bit of a free hand is important. And I think that's what we're going to see in this squad. You know, watching the guys, like I'm actually interested to see Leroy Sané come on maybe at some point of time and see how he plays. He's recently moved to Germany, and it'll be a different ball game for him as well. Gundogan has had probably the best season he's had in City for a very long time. He was a big reason behind why City got up to the finals of the Champions League. So yes, there's a lot of pressure, but that's what the big stage is for, and that's where the likes of Germany and even the French, that's where they stand up. And I think at this point of time, they'll probably have more going into this game, thinking that, yes, we have a lot to lose, but sometimes it's not bad to have a lot to lose, because it kind of frees up your mind in terms of, okay, I mean, we're kind of close to rock bottom. So let's just go out and do our best. France, on the other hand, they have a point to prove, right? They do have a point to prove. They've got a point to prove within the dressing room. They've got a point to prove to the world. They're flamboyant. They're champions. If anything, I would think France is going into this with more pressure, subconsciously, than the Germans are.
Chinmay, the group of death, he's saying the French are going in with more pressure than the Germans are. This is also Hungary and Portugal, belong to this group. So this is in effect a group of death. We were talking about this group, in fact, on our curtain raiser. Whoever wins this game tonight, provided there is a winner, they take there is a significant advantage for the winners tonight. Also, imagine, I take Chirag's point for a minute and think of Germany as underdogs in football, world football. How does that sound? And does that make them doubly more dangerous? And also, does the French combination tell you that probably, it's not always great? You can't always expect great things just because it started with stars. They've done great things, but also look at the ego tussle and the similar intentions in that camp.
The answer is very simple. There are a lot of stars. The first question I come in, the big team. The big team is meant to handle pressure at the highest level. These guys, they've all played Real Madrid, Karim Benzema. You talk about, right? Otto Griezmann for Barcelona. You talk anyone, N'Golo Kante, he says, Chelsea. They are used to handling pressure in the big clubs. Now they have a conglomerate of them in a team, France. The French team from 2018 is on a roll. And they're now used to Chirag. In one point I agree, and other point I disagree. Once you reach a place, Virat Kohli's Indian team, you get used to handling that pressure at the top. You may be under pressure, but these players enjoys the pressure. Kylian Mbappe, maybe a little bit of here and there in Giroud. I don't think Chirag is right in saying Giroud may not be starting in the first 11, right? So it doesn't matter really. Once they're into the park, they all forget. The whistle blows, the ball keeps rolling. So for me, the France team has the ability to handle all this, the kind of expectation building around them. And as for Germany, as you said, is an underdog. This is not the same Germany of 2014, where they are really steamrolling every team. This is a German team which has got some players who has played in the Champions League final. That is fine. But for them, they're not so experienced. Okay, like the other guys, Griezmann and all these guys are quite experienced now. So these teams, there is a question mark. The previous German team had got now Müller and Hummels. They have the experience. But having said that, Manuel Neuer is also there in the goal. But having said that, are the entire rest of the team well equipped to do that? There is a big question mark. There's a big question mark for the fact that they are not confident that 6-0 drubbing against Spain, losing to Northern Macedonia, that doesn't augur well for them. So for me, I think if they does well, that's good. But the things are heavily stacked against the German team. That's for me.
Right.
Can I just?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I think the results coming into the tournament actually don't matter. They matter in terms of confidence, but the teams were very different. Their playing styles were very different. They were trying different things. So
Hmm.
I think knowing the experience that the Germans have and the French as well, it's going to be a different ball game. I don't think what the friendlies are going to dictate anything in terms of how they're going to actually turn out in the Euros. They're
Chirag,
going to
that
be
was
on
that
their
was World Cup qualifier. That was not friendlies. World
yes,
Cup
yeah,
qualifier.
World Cup qualifier. I understand, but the way that they would have approached those games would are going to be very different from the way they would approach these games, and that's my point. That the approach towards even a tactician when they're trying to work out what the opposition is going to play like, coming into a big tournament like this, it becomes very different. I think in those games they were a bit complacent because of the opponent, and
Hmm.
and that was wrong. I'm not disagreeing with that, and the results, the numbers speak volumes. But in going into this particular game, and when you're talking about this
Hmm.
particular tournament, I
Hmm.
think the approach is going to be different. I think we are going to see a different German squad. We're going to see the French squad under a bit of pressure because of performance, but they're flamboyant and they've got goals in them. At the end of the day, it's a very simple thing. Are the three center backs that I think they're probably going to start with three center backs, the Germans? How are they going to actually match up with the forward line of the French? And most importantly, and I think this is where the game is going to be won or lost. How does N'Golo Kante get played? I think that's the most important point. Is he going to sit in front of the back four, or is he going to do the role that he's been doing through the season for Chelsea, where he's going up a bit more towards the front? So I think that's something I would be interested to see, because that would determine exactly where we end up and what the result's going to be like.
Right, right. So French flamboyance versus German precision, and that's the kind of German precision Chirag is hoping for. That's the one he's talking about. Of course, there'll be challenges
Mhm.
for the Germans, undoubtedly. But before we wrap it up in a sense and get a sense of the scoreline from you two gentlemen, couple of questions. Vignesh Konar is asking: is everything good between Giroud and Mbappe? No, Vignesh. That's what we were talking about on Sports Today. The French captain and coach would have you believe everything is good and everything is flowery and rosy. The two of them are best friends, holding hands, walking on the park. It's not the case. It's not the case at all. And well, we've talked about that at length, both Chirag and Chinmoy. Kaushik Brahma is asking, Chirag, if you want to take that. Kaushik Brahma is asking, don't you think Hugo Loris is a little too old for this kind of lightning fast of football? Your take on that?
Uh, Again, Hugo Lloris and Manuel Neuer play very, very differently. In terms of Manuel Neuer's almost a centre back most of the time in terms of his positioning. Lloris, when he plays in Tottenham, which is his club game, is a very different kind of formation, and the role that he plays. If you keep age apart, I think as shot stoppers, both of them are brilliant. Manuel
Mhm.
Neuer has been number one for many, many a year. Hugo Lloris has been there amongst the top three or four or five for also the last 4 or 5 years. Um, no, I don't think he's too old. I do think he's got experience coming into it. You have to remember he was around in 2018. He's vastly experienced in guiding that back line. The biggest thing of a goalkeeper, the biggest way you judge a goalkeeper actually, and as spectators and fans, we can never see this, is how they actually deal with the back four in front of them, how they actually deal with the center backs. Are they reading the game as well as they do? I think both of them do that brilliantly. But in that sense, again, from the perspective of what we've been talking about, I think Manuel Neuer has probably got a slight edge.
Do we agree to disagree on the Loris Manuel Neuer debate as well? Chirag, do we? What is your consensus on that? Because I just want to follow up with you as well on that question. Is Hugo Loris too old for this kind of lightning football? A question from Kaushik Brahma. I want to take your point as well because you've been so closely associated with football and fitness around on the park. Chinmay.
See, I'm not going to comment on this because Chirag has already passed on that. I've taken side with France, so I'll better answer anything on France. I leave the answer to Chirag what he said.
Okay. No, I thought as a parting shot, maybe get the two of you to shake hands on something and agree to disagree because it's always fun to debate different aspects of football. But before we go, Chirag, Chinmay,
Mhm.
your predicted score lines. Would you like to predict where the match would be heading? You're also welcome to forecast a draw if you like. What's your prediction for this game?
I think uh, I think it's going to be 2-1, 2-1 to Germany. I think the French are going to start off really well. I think they're going to be attacking quite well. I think it's going to be a very tight game, but I have a feeling that in the second half the Germans might just come out with a bit of extra pace and zip around. Not that the French don't have it, but also they're going to see less of the ball. I think the French are going to see more of the ball. They'll have more possession, but I think the back line is going to have a bit of a good day out on the park today for the Germans. So yeah, 2-1.
2-1 to Germany, says Chirag. Chinmoy, your take on it?
Just the other way around. 2-1 to France. Just the other way. 2-1 to France. Okay. And I tell you the scorer. It will be Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema. And for them, Thomas Muller.
Or I would have thought, just to add a little spice, you would have said, Giroud assist with the help from an assist from Mbappe. Maybe, that would sort of lay down 10% that French capture.
You never know. It could be that, because Giroud, even in 2018, was a big performer for them. He was a guy who's they could play the ball up front. They gave him a very, very different aspect. A lot of their football was kind of like the Spanish back then in 2008 and 2012, where they were playing on the ground. But Giroud gives you that opportunity to play the ball forward. He can hold it up. He can get the likes of Pogba and Rabiot to come up. So I wouldn't be surprised. But then again, he's not going to be in the pitch in the beginning. So I think it's going to be Benzema who might be a bit more influential in this tournament.
Right. Yeah. There are already reactions to Chirag's prediction. Vignesh is saying Chirag Paul is too optimistic against the outstanding French football team. But he's also explained why he's optimistic, and fair enough points, even though Chirag and Chinmoy haven't seen eye to eye on a couple of aspects tonight. Mm-hmm. And France 2-0, says Jadeja Hardik Singh. That's a prediction for. So there are predictions flying thick and fast, but we'll have to wait and see. Of course, Hungary and Portugal also, that's the other game that we're going to stay on top of. Cristiano Ronaldo, remember, he's tied with Platini on 9 goals, the most in European Championships. If he scores tonight, he will, of course, go past. And, who knows, right? Cristiano Ronaldo at 36, he's still one of the most talked about footballers in the sport for obvious reasons. We'll, of course, come back with a lot more. We'll come back with a lot more of the European Championship, cricket, building up the World Test Championship, and, of course, the Olympics as we continue to build up to Tokyo as well. Thank you so much for joining us here, Chinmoy, Chirag, as usual, and all your comments and your views. Thank you. Do watch all our remaining shows on various other sports, and please do subscribe to Sports Today. Thank you, and have a very, very good and safe evening.